How do you design a house to have the best natural light? Let's find out today on Smith House. Howdy y'all, it's George Smith. My wife Veronica and I run Smith House Co. We're a develop, design, build firm out of Austin, Texas. And a week ago or so, I posted this photo asking which way should clear story windows be facing to have the best natural light. And we got two main answers. Some people said north, some people said south. Those windows actually face east. So who is right on which way windows should be facing? I'm going to give you some tools to help determine which way your window should be facing, because there's not always a right answer, but I'm going to give you some tools to help understanding which way windows should be facing to accomplish different things. I'm going to do that with 3 different points. And point number 1 is we're going to talk about the sun. We're going to talk about how it goes across the sky, what it is, and all of its features. Number 2, we are going to talk about orientation of the building based on what we know about that sun. And then 3, we're going to talk about overhangs. We're going to be talking about shade structures that we can incorporate that will give us the benefit of light coming into the house at some parts of the year and being shaded at other parts of the year. So to do that, we're going to talk about this shed right here. This shed is a she shed that we're putting on Monarch Woods as well. I really like using this as my model because it's simple. It's a shed. There's very few design constraints, competing spaces. Like, it's got a very simple job to do, and it's doing that job. And it has a lot of the same motifs that are used throughout the other buildings, the barn and the residence. But both of those have a lot more things going on and are competing with each other. They're competing with themselves. There's just a lot of different rooms and different considerations that you have to do as buildings get more and more complex. That would be harder to explain the simple truths that we're going to be talking about in this building. So that's why I'm using the shed here. So first, a few things about the sun. It's bright. Duh. It's hot. Yeah. It rises in the east and it sets in the west, and it goes over our heads in different places depending on the time of the year. So the brightness we want to utilize in some cases. We want that direct light coming through our windows and being really bright inside. And maybe in other cases, we don't want that direct light, but we do want the indirect light. The sun is so bright that even if the light's not coming directly from the sun to you, it's going to hit something and it's going to bounce back and reflect back in. So that indirect light can be utilized in different ways as well. It's hot. Sometimes you want that radiant energy to be coming directly into your house and warming a space. Sometimes you don't want that. It rises in the east, so sometimes you want to be able to see, if you can, you want to be able to see the sunrise. It sets in the west. Sometimes, again, if you can, you want to be able to see that sunset. But in the west, right before sunset, a few hours before sunset at least, the sun is just super bright, super hot. It's going to be very taxing if you live in certain parts of the country to have that west sun bearing straight through the glass. So you got to consider that. How do you limit the amount of radiant energy that you get at, say, 4 p.m., but maximize your great sunset views at, say, 7 p.m.? The third thing that gets a little bit more tricky, or at least people don't seem to think about as much, is the sun doesn't track over our heads in the same trajectory all year long. So in the summer, it goes directly overhead, but in the winter, it's more in the southern hemisphere. It sort of tracks across the edge of the sky more. The reason why, I'm going to use my hands as models. This is the sun. This is the earth. You're my fingernail here. In the winter, we're tilted back, and the sun is raking across and feels like it's further in the southern hemisphere, making it winter because of a lot of different reasons. The sun is not warming our local our location as much during the winter, and then as we go around the sun to the summer, now we're tilted back so the sun is directly in line with us. It's directly overhead. And we can utilize that difference to maximize the sun in the winter and minimize the sun in the summer. So we want to have as much radiant heat coming in through our windows and light coming in the dreary days of winter in the winter. And we want to minimize how much light is coming through the windows and how much radiant heat we have coming through the windows during the summer. Let's look here at the shed, and I'll show you a couple of different scenarios. We'll start first with this is the floor plan here, and I've drawn out several sun angles. This is Chief Architect that I'm using here, and one of the things that I like about it is it's very easy for me to draw in sun angles and actually use the angle of the sun to light the model, so I can do some quick testing and get my design right. So when we first started designing this, we knew that there was going to be a lake over here, a pond over here to the west of the building. So we knew that we wanted to be able to enjoy that view. That was going to be the primary view. We also knew that the road is going to be over here on the east. It's a long way away on the east, but it's going to be over there on the east. So we were less concerned about having great views there. This wall was going to be southerly facing, and this wall was going to be northern facing, and they both have great views, but not as great as the east facing. So that sort of gave us an idea of like, okay, we want to be able to utilize that west side. Now, how do we design the building to take advantage of those beautiful sunsets over that pond, but not have just a ton of light coming in at the hottest part of the day? The second consideration was, how do we have a greenhouse effect? How can we have plantings going on in this window? This window will have some shelving on it, and there will be seedlings started in the winter and early spring that will need maximum sunlight, but we don't want to overheat the building again in the summer. So we're looking at overhangs there as well. I'm going to show you here in a second how that all plays out in reality, but back to these sun angles for a second. Obviously, they're all tied to which way north is. So one of my encouragements to people as they are building anything is to design it for the place that they're going to be putting it. It'll be disappointing if you're building your house and you just buy a plan offline. And there's nothing wrong with buying a plan offline, but you need to buy the plan offline with the thought of how it's going to be on your lot and how the light is going to play in. There are plans that will do better for certain lots and won't do as well on other lots. The better recommendation is get a designer or an architect involved early on. Maybe they can modify a plan for you for not too expensive, or ideally they can come up with something from scratch, because building a house is incredibly expensive, and having professionals involved at the beginning is very smart in my opinion. Yeah, it's going to be thousands of dollars, but it's a good use of funds to make sure that the final product is as good as it can be. So in this case, if we didn't care about, we just bought this plan offline and it's a shed and we said we're going to put it in our backyard, this is how it was designed to be. In the winter, this is noon on December 21st, the winter solstice. We have full sun on the face of this shed. If we were to plop this on and say that we did polar opposite, now we flipped it to now we're looking at the northern face instead of the southern face, you see that we have this big window is completely in shade. The back window here, it's getting good light, but that wasn't what it was designed to do. It's not the big window. It's not the big window that's letting in this winter light. It was supposed to be this, but because we flipped it, now it's not doing what it's supposed to do. And, worse, let's say that we have this shed and for some reason we put it in to where Now, this is the east facing. Now we have at noon, we've got the sun. It's wanting to creep in, but our overhangs are so big that it just really isn't utilizing the maximum use of these windows here, but it's better. And then the worst case scenario is if we throw it in, we flip it completely around to where now this is our northern face. We have completely eliminated all of our natural light coming into this building. So it's wintertime and you're wanting to work in your shed and have good, cozy light while you're out there in the dreary winter, and you've got none of it. It's just cold and it's dark. Your porch where your door comes out to is completely covered. It just doesn't work like it's designed to. So all plans aren't the same. You can't just take a plan that was designed to work one way and plop it in willy-nilly any other way and expect it to perform the same. You can do whatever you want. I don't care what you do, but you can't expect a design, even a simple design like a shed. If it's a design shed, you can't expect it to perform exactly the same if you just throw it in however you want. You got to think about how it's going to utilize the natural trajectory of the sun. And this is just one example of noon on December 21st. Another example, if we change our light here, let's say that we're going to sunset in the summer. Let's say it's 7 p.m. on June 21st. So now the way that this is designed, we get a great sunset here. We've got full light coming in. We're looking over the pond. Everybody's happy. Again, not to beat a dead horse, but if we take this and we flipped it around the opposite way, now the sunset is almost completely lost for this porch. You could move your chairs up here. You do get some light here. So that's not the end of the world. That's not the worst case scenario for that one time on that one day with this orientation. You take it to where this is the north face. This is actually not too bad now. You're going to get pretty good sunset again for this one orientation. Doesn't mean that noon will be good. It doesn't mean that the rest of the day will be good or the rest of the year will be good. It just means that on this day it's not too bad in that orientation. And you flip it around the other way. And then this is just dumb. Your whole building is facing the wrong way. If you were wanting to have a sunset view, your whole building is facing the wrong way. So this is wrong. I mean, it's just not what this building was designed to do. Again, this is a very simple shed. Imagine if this was a whole house with a lot of competing views, a lot of competing windows, a lot of competing rooms. It just gets really complicated in a hurry, and if you just flip it around willy-nilly, it won't work as well as it could if it was designed for the location that it was. So we've talked about the sun, how it goes across the sky. We've talked about orientation and how that makes a difference on how the building performs in response to that sun. Now let's talk about overhangs. The easiest way for us to see this is if we go to noon on the winter solstice. This is the most dramatic time that you will see the biggest difference between noon winter solstice and noon summer solstice. So noon winter solstice is here, and you see that we've got the best possible light coming in through this southerly facing window. We can do shelves here, and we have really great light coming in for our plants. Now, let's take it to noon on the summer solstice, right? Now look at that. Immediately you can see that this front overhang is shading our structure. So we're getting maximum light in the winter, and we're minimizing that light in the summer. We're still getting great indirect sunlight because it's bright. It's the sun, but we're not having that glaring direct light coming in and scorching our plants on the inverse, getting too hot during the summer, we're able to shade that. And we're able to do that by setting this overhang precisely. So you see here how we've got this shade coming just basically to the foot of our building, and then as the year progresses, it creeps up. And then in the winter, it's going to be fully exposed, and then it comes back down through. So it's like automated shades throughout the year. The angle of the sun and this overhang play together, so it lights the room, and then it shades the room. If I took this and I didn't care about the design of the overhangs for the shading, let me switch over to roof plane. I can bring this back. Let's just say that I did a minimum modern overhang. Now you see that in the summer, we've got the light just pouring in over through that window. The rafters, I left the rafters there, so those provide a little bit of shade, but if we didn't have that at all, we deleted that off, we would have this whole thing lit up in sunlight in the summer, and it just wouldn't be as nice on the inside. Now, the great thing about this particular day on noon is it's so high overhead that even with minimum overhangs, you still get minimum light infiltration in there. But if you go either side off of the summer solstice, it can get worse because that sun is now creeping back down to the southern hemisphere and it hasn't cooled off. So we're talking like instead of June, let's talk about August. Here in Texas, August, it's super hot and that light's just going to be pouring. It's just going to be pouring in there. But if you have your overhang set correctly, then you get shade. And in August, this shade's going to be up here at the bottom of the sill, so that by September you have more, October you have more, November you have more, and December it's fully exposed, and then the cycle reverses itself. So not only can you change how the building performs by its orientation, you can also change how the building performs by overhangs. The front overhang we just talked about with the winter versus the summer. These left and right overhangs, on the right hand side we see that as a carport, and then on the left hand side we see that as a porch. Those are designed intentionally as well. The carport really isn't looking at anything with the sun, just because it's meant as a carport. It has a different function, and that roof is mostly there for protection against rain and the elements, not against sun. The porch is a little bit different. We obviously want to protect the inhabitants. Sitting on the porch with the rain coming down would be a fantastic way to spend an afternoon. But we also wanted to shade the structure during the hot western sun of the afternoon, but be able to see the sunset as it breaks across that structure. So we can look at that here. Let's say that we're doing 4 p.m. in June, and that's the heat of the day. Our building is still shaded. And then if we fast forward and we say, all right, now it's 6 p.m. and it's cooling off, and it's 6 p.m. and it's cooling off, and we're wanting to see that sunset. We can see that sunset all the way inside on the couch. The porch is fully exposed, and then by 7 o'clock, the whole thing is completely lit up. So it just shows you that you can utilize these overhangs for multiple reasons, not just protection from the elements, which most people think porches, we're going to keep ourselves out of the rain, and that's absolutely true. But it also, if you do it right, you can change the sizing of that so it gives you direct sunlight into the buildings when you want it to be, and minimize the sunlight when you don't want it to be. And finally, I want to show you how we accomplish the maximum utilization of natural sunlight in this very simple building by comparing the winter solstice and the summer solstice in a time lapse going from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. on both of those days. So here we are. It is June 21st. It's the summer solstice, and it is 6 a.m. We've got the sunrise coming through. You can see that our whole building is shaded here. We're not utilizing the sunrise because at this time we're going to be out in the garden. We're going to be waking up. We're going to be working outside in the summer. So we're not so concerned about sitting there and seeing the sunrise. Again, if this was a bedroom, maybe we would have a different design consideration. If this was a kitchenette where you're making coffee, we'd definitely have a different design consideration. So 6 a.m., 7 a.m., you see how the sun's coming up. 8, 9, 10, 11, we're staying in the shade all the way through. 12, still in the shade. 1, it's hot, but man, our building is still completely shaded. 2, 3, 4, we're starting to get a little bit of sunlight breaking across the building at 4. 5, okay, now we're getting a lot of sun as the sun starts transitioning from afternoon sun to evening sun. 6, again, great sunlight, great shadows. And then 7, we're basically pretty close to sunset, and we've got just full light as that sun is setting across that lake. Here it is in December 21st, right? 6 a.m., same time, but the lights are on because it's completely dark. The sun hasn't even risen yet. 7, same thing. 8, all right, 8 o'clock. Here's the sun. The sun's coming up, and man, we have just great. We have great sun at 8 a.m. It's later in the day. The vegetable gardens are not working outside. Most of this work is going to be done inside with the vegetables. So we've got great sun inside, and we're able to enjoy that sunrise. 9 a.m., sun's up. 10, you see that shadow on the backside tracking around. 11, 12, and you can see that this sun is just moving around, directly shining at this south wall all the way through. 1, 2, 3, starting to go down. 4, 5. Now we're getting pretty close to sunset, and we got this great sunset where the porch is lit up. We've got great light coming into the building. 6, and the sun is actually below the horizon. That's why you get this angle off my terrain there. And 7, we're already back to the lights on condition of our shed. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope this helps. I hope that if nothing else, you start thinking about how the sun is going to be interacting with your buildings, and that the way that you're building your buildings, the way you're designing the buildings, or if you're just buying a pre-bought house plan and plugging it in, how you're orienting that on your property to respond to the natural rhythms around it, because that can make it the difference between being it's a pretty house that looks good on Pinterest to, man, this really gives the people in the house a sense of wonder every day. Not because the house is so great that they're just like, oh, this is such a wonderful house, but that the house disappears. The house fades into the background so that they can enjoy the crazy cool creation around them and be connected with nature and people, and the house is just there to support those functions. Thanks for watching. Go check us out over on Instagram, on TikTok, on wherever you waste your time on social media. We'll see you next time on Smith House.